If you think about the skill set of customer success, they're strategists, love to talk to customers, they love to solve problems, but going deep into a data integration is not fun for them. And so does it have to be part of their job, even though it's part of their process? Ended up getting an engineering type of resource to be part of that process because it did light them up. They love that data integration. If we could take this off of their CSM's plate, their capacity issue goes away. They don't need to hire any more CSMs, and it increased their employee satisfaction. It's a cool breakthrough, but challenge people listening is if you're having capacity issues, CSM weren't happy, onboarding taking too long, is there a step in your onboarding that you need to take out of one team and into a different resource where that is their natural skill set?
Spotlight, brought to you by CSM Focus, where we refine customer success, uniting GTM teams across North America.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Spotlight podcast by CS in Focus. I am your host, Elizabeth Italiano, and I am here with Julie Persofsky, founder of Achieve Exponential Growth. Julie comes to us with a wealth of customer success experience, which includes roles at companies such as Eloqua and Influitive. She is a dedicated revenue strategist with over 20 years of go-to-market experience, specializing in elevating companies on the cusp of significant growth with a particular emphasis on customer success. Welcome, Julie. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for having me. It's great to connect again. It's been fascinating to be in customer success since the dawn of customer success, when it wasn't even a name, what we called ourselves, and just seeing the evolution. And what I'm most excited for right now is where customer success is going. We're more revenue focused. I've always been very revenue focused. My teams have always generated revenue. It's been sort of one of those deal breakers. For me, it's either we own the revenue, we own a number, or it's not the right team for me, which is really interesting because there's the different DNA of all customer success teams. What I find interesting about customer success is there's no one fit model. It's been fun since launching Achieve Exponential Growth to see different types of companies from like true startup to starting to scale up and getting them to really iron out some of those kinks so they can start to scale. You can talk to 3 different CS organizations in a day, and all 3 could be structured and positioned a little bit differently. So, and I know you have a wealth of experience, so really excited to hear about building customer success programs and your experience. On that note, I'll use that as a segue to one of the first things that we wanted to dig into with you, and that's around building customer success programs from the ground up. So like you said, you have been in customer success before it was even really a term or a role. What would you recommend from your experience are the first steps that you should take when building a CS program from the ground up? They get asked a lot by CEOs. When should I invest in CS? What should they do? I was talking to someone hiring their first CS person. What does this person do on day one? Customer success start as soon as you get your first customer, whether they're paying or not. Thinking about the roles customer success need to do and the steps they need to take in order to do that. And so the first thing I would do if you're a company that doesn't even have customer success to date is to really think about what are those moments that matter in your customer life cycle that need to be a little bit more formalized, and we need to put a bit more thoughtfulness. And if you're a startup with lots of customers, maybe not necessarily kind of revenue, you can't dedicate a lot of resources to it. Looking at what the number, like what the metrics you want to impact, right? So, if retention's going really, really well because you have such a sticky product that your renewals aren't really an effort, like they're just happening, right? You can even just send an email, or you could put customers on auto renew and it wouldn't be an issue because usage is high. Then you want to shift focus to things like expansion, nurturing your customers, driving more revenue through advocacy. It's a little bit more customer marketing. Take a look at your customer journey and say, what aren't we doing right? Go back to onboarding. Are we getting our customers onboarded in the right amount of time? Are they using the products early enough? Are they getting to that aha moment? 90% of my customers, the first thing we fix is what is that aha moment? And that aha moment is when they first start using their product, this like relief that, okay, I just invested in this product. It's going to create value and impact for me personally in my business. I'm going to continue to invest more. So like that moment, it's not full value. It's like none of those business terms. It's hard to define, but it's like this feeling that your customer gets of, okay, I made the right decision. I see the benefit. It's worth the work. Can you make that happen as soon as possible? And what is that moment? I love that you bring up relief, because as important as the tangible KPIs and metrics are, that emotion is a really important component as well. So giving the sense of relief or excitement, or on the other hand, watching for frustration. So how do you prevent that from going forward? So you mentioned one of your clients are just hiring their first CS. What were the signals to them that they needed to bring on their first CSM? It's real. What I find really interesting is this was a client who has great retention. They just don't have a process around retention. And so for them, it was, oh, hey, you have over 100 customers and no one's managing that. It presents potential risk. We aren't talking to our customers. We're not nurturing them, but a lot of opportunity because they also have two products they can sell their customer base, and they're not doing that. Their product is word of mouth. We shifted to a little bit more of a customer marketing type of role because it's scaled nurture programs. Let's create some videos. Let's create some emails and a referral program to engage customers. Isn't that more formal customer success where you have a book of business, nurture them? Onboarding is simple and more technical, so it doesn't need customer success. Got it. That goes back to your earlier point around the fact that different customer success teams require different tactics, different areas of focus. And yeah, when you start rolling out your customer success team, you might notice that, okay, we thought we needed this, but we actually need to focus on this. So I think it's safe to say that iteration in customer success when building is likely or frequent for sure. Yeah. I actually had this really interesting situation come up. I'd love to know if you've had this happen as well. So their customer success team was doing everything: onboarding, nurturing, renewing, expanding. That's a huge red flag for me. What about you? It's one of those things where if you have CSMs focused on onboarding, that ends up often being like where that initial, I don't want to say fire, but that really initial heightened need is. And so there's the kickoff, there's, the introduction. I find CSMs spend so much time on onboarding. Sometimes we sell to bad fit customers and you're dealing with frustration. And then the long tail gets kind of forgotten or put aside, doesn't get prioritized because we're trying to get customers onboarded. Then it's, oh, wait, I have all these customers up for renewal. I haven't talked to them since onboarding. Maybe onboarding is this quick cadence, like a BDR called nurturing strategic conversations. You can't fit them all in. But the unique thing about this client that, when we looked at their onboarding, there was one stage in particular that was very technical, taking a lot of time in their onboarding process. And part of it was they weren't the right people to do it. Like they just didn't have that skill set. So they were often pulling in another resource ad hoc. Their CSMs felt overwhelmed and they were starting to have a lot of like satisfaction issues. So we were getting grumblings, right, of like not liking their job. And when we figured out what about their job did they not like, it was literally just like one step in onboarding. If you think about the skill set of customer success, they're, strategists. They love to talk to customers. They love to solve problems, but going deep into a data integration is not fun for them. Does it have to be part of their job, even though it's part of their process? Mm-hmm. And so we ended up, getting an engineering type of resource to be part of that process because it did light them up. They love that data integration. If we could take this off their CSM's plate, their capacity issue goes away. They don't need to hire more CSMs and it increases employee satisfaction. It's a cool breakthrough where we normally wouldn't look. I would challenge people listening. If you're having capacity issues, CSMs weren't happy, onboarding taking too long, is there a step in your onboarding that maybe you need to take out of one team and into a different resource where that is their skill set. Yeah, I'd be interested from the customer perspective if they felt kind of any difference in the customer experience from working with ESMs who are a little disgruntled over having to do this step that they didn't like versus pulling in someone who lights up over that type of work. So, when team members start to feel frustrated, it often ends up getting kind of spilled over to the customer experience. I'm sure there was some positive impact there. We've all been into that store or coffee shop where you have the barista who loves what they do, the most beautiful latte art, and they're just like, have a great day, versus the one who's just like, I hate my job. Like you show up and it's like, oh my God, did you really have to interrupt my day and make me do my job? Versus, oh my God, let me make you this beautiful foam image. Speaking of segmenting roles, switching gears a little bit, but sticking along the segmentation theme, what about segmenting your customer base? We look at specializing roles. We also need to look at, okay, here's my customer base. Maybe we have a number of different segments we're working across. How do you identify the right customer segments to focus on when creating that CS strategy and building that team? Yeah, I think between the two of us, we've probably looked at 1,000 customer success teams. I think you're being modest. I could, with my eyes closed, tell you your enterprise clients are under 20% of the number of customers you have, and some are between 30 and 60% of your revenue. They need to be managed differently because losing one of those customers is like losing anywhere from 10 to 100 SMB or mid-market customer. Okay, so when you think about that, it's like a no-brainer, right? You have to keep your enterprise. There's so much value there. There's so much expansion opportunity there. Like that, the steps, the impact is probably very similar, but how you manage them is going to be very different. And everyone's looking to cut costs, especially right now. Everyone's looking to scale. So figure out how to do that with your SMB segment, maybe even market, depending on the revenue spread. And this is the biggest challenge anyone in a revenue facing role, any CEO has to recognize. As soon as you scale a function, you're going to lose revenue. You can't scale and offer the same level of services, but I encourage people to look at their metrics. I can afford to lose 15% of my SMB base, maybe even 30%, because my cost to serve that segment is going to be this ratio. It's very mathematical. You can spreadsheet it out and say, this is what we're going to invest in. This is our anticipated loss. Everyone's always like, I want to increase our retention, but sometimes like step churn for that segment because the actual revenue is low. Focus on greater opportunities that drive more revenue. I'm so glad that you brought up the cost to serve because it's something that isn't talked about enough, I don't think, in customer success and on broader go-to-market conversations. Obviously, retention is really important, but now with a lot of companies driving towards profitability and efficient growth, that cost to serve is so important. And it goes back to like ICT and knowing your customers and where you can be most successful. Okay, who not only can we capture, but then who can we sustain at a reasonable cost? Anything that you would say that you would look for as like early warning signals in a customer segment that's too costly? I would segment your customers, cohort them if you can, and then pick up on trends. Look at your ratios, CSMs to number of accounts, and opportunity. Look at your churn by segment. That would be the number one thing I would recommend is looking at your churn by segment and managing each segment a little bit individually. Yeah, that's great. It's great to know your overall churn number, but if you don't understand it by segment, it's hard to manage your different books of business and make data-driven decisions. Bringing an engineering team into the customer journey with the integration. And when we think about the customer life cycle and making it effective and efficient, managing that cost to serve, we're often pulling in teams such as support, product. How would you recommend as teams scale and grow that CS starts to interact and function and engage their cross-departmental teams? This is a hard one because as soon as you involve multiple teams members, you creep into that meeting. Meetings are costly and inefficient. Watch for that. Another client I was working with, in my first month, I cut out a couple meetings. This is ineffective. We're meeting with the same people, or this can be solved by the stop of the desk. Stop at the side of the desk. Hey, I got that feedback. Not super scalable, but effective. Slack has that calling feature, and I would just encourage people to do a little bit of that. This doesn't help us scale, but it does solve a bit of a problem where we get into this meeting out of like every time we have something we need to talk about. Okay, let's get a meeting. Next thing you know, there's 16 people in it, and an hour is gone and nothing's happened. I do think that technology, reporting software, getting support requests into product management platforms, having customer stories, tagging the customers who are requesting that, and then reviewing it and saying, okay, what revenue could this impact? That's combined with sales. How much opportunity could we gain? Are we losing deals because we don't have this functionality or integration? Same on the customer side. And having point people, right? It's like, let it, allow technology to allow you to scale on the reporting front, and then have a representative from sales, customer success, and product to evaluate and address the opportunity and losses, to prioritize that. Yeah. I like the Tiger team. They can be the point people, identify, okay, what are maybe the rules of engagement? How do we scale this so that when teammates are working together, they're not reinventing the wheel every time, which also gets expensive. Too many meetings, support and CS, joining calls, the cost to serve goes up. So yeah, I really like the Tiger team idea. One of the hardest things in a startup as you're starting to scale, like at a startup, you're like all hands on deck, involved in so many things. And then as you scale, it's accepting the fact that there's other people who can do that job. There's this trust that you have to have in your team. And I see a lot of companies failing because they don't have trust in their other team members and feel they need to be involved in everything. Trusting your team and saying, okay, I don't need to be part of this. That is so hard. I struggle with that. Our egos are there. It's like, you need to be there. You would add benefit, but does the benefit cancel out other things that you should be doing? And building up the team, giving them responsibilities. It's a hard shift, but important. Yeah, it is. It is a difficult shift. Any suggestions on how to build that trust? Like, would you look at reporting? Is it more cultural and team building? What have you seen work? Yeah, having that Tiger team give a quick report back to their teams on, here's the decisions we made. Here's why we decided to invest in this, this, and this. Here's why we decided not to invest this and this. A 5-minute update is a great way to say, here's the conclusion. As a leader, accepting you've hired great people, trusting in them, having faith in the team to do the job. Also having clear parameters around the function, right? What they're trying to do, the project that they're working on, KPIs. Right. Speaking of parameters, let's talk about customer success and support. Sometimes customer success is treated like support. Sometimes there's blurred lines around roles and responsibilities. How would you define the key differentiators between support and customer success? I'll ask this in a 2-part way. One, when you're early stage and you're starting to build both teams, and then later stages as you start to scale. Support is user issues. I'm having trouble with a bug. I'll call them immediate need to solve type issues. Customer success is around, in an ideal world, your customer success team is almost outbound completely. There should be very few circumstances where your customer success team is booking a meeting because they're getting a request from a client, unless it's like, hey, we're trying to do this new strategic initiative and we want to figure out how your tech can be part of that. Outbound, right? I'm managing the relationship. I'm controlling the journey. I know what you need to do in order to be successful. And I'm going to monitor, I'm going to, hold the client versus inbound exclusively. Okay, you have a problem and solve it. Transactional. I love that. I never thought of it like that, inbound and outbound. Right. How do I explain it? I like that because it's true. I mean, CS, ideally, we're positioning them, structuring their role and giving them the capacity so that they can do that, outbound motion where it's I'm reaching out to clients proactively with a purpose. I love that. You just coined anything in customer success. Not right now. all our clients are running into, and every CS team runs into scale issues, runs into capacity issues because they're in this inbound. And so you create this scenario where you can't control it. Right. So, imagine, okay, this might be a good analogy or a terrible analogy, but like maybe I'm just in it because I've got like, reps 3 little kids. I know my like Mondays have this thing, and then I've got 3 kids in soccer on Tuesdays, and I organize this carpool. And then all of a sudden, if you Subarus happened to me yesterday, maybe that's why it's top of mind. Another thing in to the schedule on a Tuesday, I'm done. Drop me off, let me lie down, and appropriate for a few minutes. Not. That's how our CSMs, they have their day planned. I'm sure they have their meetings all scheduled out. And then they get all these requests or fires from customers or product or sales. It's like, I can no longer manage my time. When you think about your capacity and roles, plan out meetings with customers, plan out your prep time, and then you have a gap in your calendar, which is, okay, this is for the inbound. You can manage it, but not if it's coming at you. That reminds me of what you were talking about earlier in terms of CSMs that have a very wide breadth of responsibility from onboarding, adoption, renewal, and expansion. It's like a peanut butter spread of attention. And, in the run of a day, it's very difficult to do all of those things. You burn out. And onboarding, I would say onboarding does sometimes have a bit of an inbound element to it because there might be, whether it's an integration issue or a change management issue, I think it can be proactive and outbound. If you understand the steps that need to happen, you can pretty much predict everything. Harder. We're going to do the training, and then we're going to have a follow-up call to see what issues there are. And I just feel like that's very manageable. How do we get to that point? Onboard your first customer. You don't know what you're doing. Let's talk through this, bring product in, onboard 30 customers. If you're in your first 30, create an Excel sheet and be like, we did this, and what did you for your next client? And then you have to figure out the steps when onboarding your customers that make for success. Then map it out. So when you scale that team, you know the steps in. Right. The complexity will make a difference, and the economics of a business, whether it's a specialization role or more broad, that's the goal, to get that scalable and repeatable. In terms of goals, if we go back to inbound versus outbound and support and CS, what would be some ways that you would differentiate achieving goals between the two? Let's say I'm a new founder, I've never stood up a CS or support team. How do I differentiate between the goals of the two teams? Support aims time to resolution. Did this resolve your issue? Time to resolution and actual resolving the problem. For customer success, it's about retention and expansion revenue. I love having individual company goals. Mindset around retention is a company-wide number. We want to sell the right deals. We all want to be customer-centric in our approach. We want to go above and beyond, not just do the job. If you create that company culture around customer centricity, you'll get that. But also there are individual things that people can do to manage their book of business or role. Yeah, when you go through it and think about the customer experience too, it's about how to deliver on like that cohesive customer journey and experience. Everyone has their roles and responsibilities. The customer needs to feel like it's a team that they're working with, not two siloed functions. What would you say would be your recommendations on how teams can align support and customer success to ensure cohesiveness, whether it's how they hand off, customers, exchange information? What would you recommend there? So I think it's important that after onboarding, or even potentially in onboarding, if there is a tendency to experience some technical challenges or support related items, there is hey, this is high access support, and this is our resolution times, and that, to create that. Also, if we think about enterprise versus mid-market and SMB, create a pod enterprise. Issues are typically bigger and more impactful to the business. And so if you have a pod, they can sync every day or a couple of times a week on, okay, let's run through our 10 customers that represent 20% of revenue for this company. Bring in your account manager, running sales and cross sales, operate as a pod, and own a book of business now with that whole team together. And I think that's a really amazing way to get that cohesiveness. Yeah, it's a great point about enterprise too. One of the things that I always like to look at is like revenue backlog within tickets for enterprise, and a big issue. How much revenue is tied to backlog issues, then you can prioritize that way. We're coming up on time. Is there anything that we didn't touch on today that you would say, okay, if I was going to give you one piece of advice, or, here's some gotchas to look out for that you'd like to chat about? I'll say there's two things. The first is look at the bottlenecks. Take a step back and say, what bottlenecks do we have that are helping us achieve our goal? It'll be clear on what you need to do. Sometimes that takes mapping out the customer journey end to end. Where's the biggest issue? And the second thing is, and maybe this is a plug for what we do, but we were chatting before you pushed record. You can walk into a business and in 30 minutes on a call with the CEO or, revenue leader, know exactly what's going on and where they should focus. And we do diagnostics to understand prioritization, but I have yet to be on a call like this is having this impact and this is that. Or they'll say, oh, we did this and this was the result. People don't want to spend money on people like us because like, oh, you're consultants and da-da. You don't necessarily have to do a huge overhaul and engagement, but there's a lot of value that comes from us seeing thousands of companies who have done it, made mistakes, done it well, wasted money. Ultimately, you save money by doing it. Bringing in the right person who understands your business, ICP, how you operate is really important. Even though, Elizabeth, you and I have worked together for so long, we each have very different skill sets. Find the right person, see who can be the right strategic partner, and figure out what model works to support your business as you're growing and scaling, because there's no reason for you to be figuring it out for yourself when there are some great resources out there who can help you navigate. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for pattern recognition. When somebody's seen the movie many times, hundreds or thousands of times, yeah. The issue is people give great advice, but not for your business, right? Like if you are, account-based marketing, great strategy, really effective in the right scenario. The number of times I've seen companies waste thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on account-based marketing campaigns but like, this is the wrong industry. This is the wrong segment. Your ICP doesn't fit this. So ABM, yes, great strategy, wrong business. And so that where you can also help to avoid mistakes. How can people reach you and learn from your experience and pattern recognition? Talking about free advice, I put everything on LinkedIn. I share lots of insight. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can check out my website, Achieve Exponential Growth, and subscribe to my newsletter. I'll be doing courses, different programs and coaching programs. Engage with me one-on-one or through a group fashion here. So definitely reach out, achieveexponentialgrowth.com or LinkedIn, Julie Persofsky. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. Appreciate it. Great to see your success. Thank you. Ditto to you. We'll catch up again soon.